Hello and welcome back to another video. In this episode I'm doing something a little bit different. I've left my 110 roller gun at home in favour of using some alternative weaponry. With me today I've got a 50cm customised Rob Allen roller as well as a Polespear. It's always good to try new things and keep challenging yourself. I knew that today wasn't going to be easy, but I was looking forward to it nonetheless. Super stoked to get out there. Almost as soon as I get into the water and assemble my Polespear, I'm greeted by a school of kahawai. I use the Polespear initially, diving down to the bottom where I grab onto the rocks to compensate for my positive buoyancy at that depth and wait to hopefully get a shot. With a Polespear you need to be really close to your target due to accuracy and power. If you're shooting anything more than a metre away you might as well be throwing a wet noodle at them. These kahawai are quite confident but still keeping just a little bit too much distance for me to comfortably take a shot. So instead of spooking them, taking a shot and blowing it, I just wait. I realise I'm not going to get an opportunity this dive, so I return to the surface and rethink what I'm doing. This next dive I get down an area with slightly more cover, and opposed to trying to hunt them straight off the bat, I'm doing a little bit of dusting, a little bit of grunting, looking at the ground, trying to hopefully arouse their suspicion, or curiosity rather. This is a really hard area to hunt with the Polespear, very shallow, and the terrain definitely doesn't lend itself to an ambush. Eventually when I'm waiting on the bottom I get one kahawai that breaks off from the school, comes a little bit closer to me than the others, so I reach out hoping, but he's not interested at all. And I let go of my spear and scare a couple of them off, which probably wasn't a great idea. At this point I've accepted that I'm not going to get close enough to these fish to make a good shot on the Polespear, so I switch out to the 50cm roller gun, hopefully get a slightly longer shot on these fish. Once again I'm making a shallow dive straight down to the bottom where I'm holding onto rocks and waiting there for the kahawai to come to me as opposed to going to them, make them a bit more comfortable, but there's really not a lot to hide behind them. With each dive I do, the fish are getting fewer and fewer and keeping the distance a lot more. This is pretty typical, the fish are starting to work out that I'm a threat to them at this point. Eventually I have a couple curious enough to take interest and swim towards me. At this point I extend out, pull myself along the reef and take a shot. Unfortunately the shot went a little bit low, well actually quite low, and only just nicked the fish at the bottom, tearing out almost immediately. After that blunder I didn't end up seeing any more kahawai that day. I ended up seeing a leather jacket quite nearby. I really like eating these fish and they don't pose a huge challenge, so I feel like I can get one on the Polespear. This dive is a very good example of what you don't want to do. The whole time I'm moving towards the fish quite aggressively, and this fish can tell. It wants nothing to do with me. As this fish is making a break for it, I take a shot that I have very little confidence in. This is something I don't recommend. If you think you're not going to hit the fish, you're not going to hit the fish, and it's not worth it. This next dive is what I would consider to be a very good example of how you hunt these fish. So first off, I'm getting down to the bottom and slowly working my way towards where I know this fish is, before taking shelter, hiding behind some weeds, and letting this fish come to me as opposed to aggressing towards it. This presents a lot better shot for you and makes for better footage, honestly. Here I am tucked up right behind this kelp and rock. This fish can't see any part of me except for probably my GoPro and my hand. So it's pretty interested. It's like, what is this thing? And eventually starts to make its way towards me. I'm gonna wait till it gives me the shot I want and then take it. This fish isn't going anywhere. It's gonna stay right in that same spot until I do something that scares it off. So I can really take my time, don't need to rush my shot, wait for that perfect moment and then release. A mindset that I would strongly encourage other people to have is you want to be thinking about how to get that fish to come to you, not how you're going to get over to that fish. You're going to get a much better shot at the end of the day. Using a Polespear really makes you have to think about what you're doing because you've got to be so close to the fish to actually be able to get them. That said, you can often get by with pretty poor technique. This time I'm just diving straight down to a leather jacket they swam over with the little roller gun. You can see here it presents me an easy shot. I'm not taking it. I find no satisfaction in taking that shot. I enjoy the hunt. Taking the shot wouldn't have been a hunt. Thus, I don't take it. No satisfaction. Here I get out to a more reefy kind of area. From the surface I'm looking and trying to find a spot where I can lay down. Somewhere that's sandy in between the boulders and the kelp. Somewhere I can sink into and kind of hide my body and encourage fish to come to me. Once I get there, I want to really get down into the kelp. I see these moki and I let them distract me for a while. I let them take my attention off what's going on, kind of let the other fish get accustomed to me being there without me looking around and scaring them all off with my eyes. You can see how comfortable a lot of these fish are here. They're swimming right up to me, swimming around me. no worries at all, because I showed no interest in them at the start. And there's a leather jacket in the back. He can see all these fish, that they're comfortable with me, so why would he have to fear me? He can come in, check me out, no worries, right? Despite presenting a perfect shot, sometimes you just missed. This time I went for the stone shot and shot just over him. It's unfortunate, but hey, it happens. No big deal really. So after reloading my gun, I'm making a dive down to that same spot. On my descent, I have a leather jacket just swim straight up to me, almost suicidal. This fish would have seen me on my previous dive. He would have seen the whole time I was acting calm. Even when I missed my shot, I didn't make a big deal about it. All the other fish, no worries. So he's got nothing to fear. Comes straight in. Unfortunately, gets a shaft to the face. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that these are a difficult fish to shoot. They're not. But there's a lot of them around, and from a sustainability point of view, you're a lot better targeting fish that are abundant, because these populations, they can recover a lot better than fish that are few and far between. This dive I saw quite a few leather jackets from the surface, but instead of diving down straight onto them, I'm looking for something I can hide behind. In this case, a rock. I'm tucking myself down into the shadow of it, try to disguise myself a bit, not look so obvious in the water. In the water, you're a very large creature, so you want to be doing everything you can to make yourself look as small and as unintimidating as possible. I have a try at dusting. It's pretty futile, as I need that hand there to keep me down on the rock, as I'm quite positively buoyant at this depth. I give it a little dust, but it's pretty pathetic to be honest. But anything to draw your attention away from the fish initially. As long as they think you're focused on something else, they're not going to be too worried about you. You can see now that I've got my head up, all the fish are there, they're not worried at all. They've come right in, they're swimming around, no worries. I'm not interested in them, that's what I want them to think. There are two leather jackets that come in close enough to present a shot for me. As I come up off the bottom bit, start moving my gun around, start moving my head around, these fish start to get a little bit more cautious. These leather jackets that had come right in are now starting to move their way off. At this point I decide I need to close the distance. Using my left hand I pull myself along the reef and give it a couple little kicks just to close that distance and get a good shot on this fish, landing a nice stone. A healthy ecosystem requires balance. I believe in this particular area there are too many leather jackets. They receive no pressure commercially and or recreationally in the North Island. After playing around in the shallows for a bit, I decide to move out into a bit deeper water past the point. Unfortunately, it's really rough out here. We've got a southerly coming through. The inner waters are quite calm, but when you get out, it starts to get pretty murky, pretty rough as well. So I only had a couple dives here before moving off. I know about this particular gut from previous dives, so I'm going down and attempt to make a snoop, maybe find a snapper or something sleeping at the bottom of it. So I'm crawling my way down the ledge, ready to take a shot at any moment. I got real excited when I first saw these two shadows, thinking there may be some quite large kahawai, but upon close inspection I realised they're kingfish. I make a drop down anyway, try to get close, makes good footage, and kind of imagine what it would have been like if they were maybe a bit bigger. Probably wouldn't have taken this shot, but it's always cool to imagine. Here's a bit of footage above water just showing you what it was like. Diving in times like this isn't very fun. You can't really get a good breathe up when you're getting thrashed around and have to worry about ending up in the rocks, as well as just not being very safe. When you're diving by yourself, it's not worth it to risk it in areas like this, so you're better off just taking it easy. Go shallow, take it easy, and see what you can do. Once I get back around the peninsula, I can kind of relax again and dive properly. So I'm making a dive down here along a vertical ledge. Gives me a little bit of shelter. I can see some leather jackets schooling up. So I get down, try to cover as much of my body as I can. I don't want these leather jackets to see pretty much my entire body, or they're going to be quite scared of how large I am. This time it pays off, as I have a leather jacket swim straight up to me, turn broadside and give me a perfect shot. These fish are quickly becoming one of my favourites to eat. They're really easy to clean up and fillet. You can just kind of tear the skin off and they just taste brilliant. They have sort of like a gelatinous kind of coating on the outside, and it really holds together and keeps that moisture in. Really tasty fish. Give it a try if you haven't already. Also a very pretty fish. There's nothing quite like them in our waters here. Very unique. Here I am making another dive with the mini roller gun. Notice how I'm not looking up when I'm on the bottom. I want to keep looking at the bottom for as long as I can. Really show that I'm not interested in fish, or at least make it seem that way. I look up briefly here just to get a sense of my surroundings before turning my attention back down towards the rocks. Even a nice little banded wrasse comes to say hello. These fish are really cool. I've only shot one before, don't think I'd shoot any again. I just think they're a pretty cool inhabitant of the reef. Really like these fish. I've played my cards right this time, and as I'm just sitting there, I have a leather jacket swim straight up to me. Comes, turns broadside, but it's a shot that I don't want to take, as I can see the leather jacket behind him is a bit bigger. And I know that that leather jacket there is going to be enough to kind of eliminate any doubts that that fish is having in the distance, and he's going to come and check me out. So I know if I wait it out, he's going to come and I can get a shot on a much larger leather jacket. I'm quite high off the bottom, but I know this fish is coming into me. It has no reason not to, really. When I feel the moment is right, I take my shot and get a nice stone on this fish. Really satisfying, especially on a little gun like this. Just makes it all the sweeter, really. This was an incredibly satisfying dive for me. I knew I could have taken that fish earlier. It would have been a lesser payoff, but it would have been an easy shot. But I knew I could have waited and got a bigger one, and that really did it for me. I felt mean about that dive. As I was swimming around this day, I saw quite a lot of these snails on the bottom. These are called Cook's turbans, a type of turban snail, and I've heard a bit about them. I heard you can eat them and they taste quite similar to paua. So I thought, hey, there's quite a lot around, it's a good sustainable option to take. So I took a couple, see what they were like. I'd never tried them before, so I was quite looking forward to the experience. I wasn't let down at all. I cooked these up and I was absolutely blown away. I thought they tasted almost indistinguishable from paua, and they're about 100 times easier to find and arguably much more sustainable. There's plenty of these around. I've only in a handful of times in my life seen legal pauas in the Coromandel, but these things are everywhere. I'm going to be taking many more of them in the future. It's a good option. And you can see here just how easy they are. You can just grab them off the rocks. In one dive I got on 2 nice handfuls of them. Quite nice size ones as well. You do get a bit of meat off these guys. One of the many advantages of using a float boat is you can chuck shellfish and crays into them without having to tie them onto your line. I end up having another dive just straight down from the float boat to try and grab a couple more. You can see these things really aren't hard to find. They're just on the rocks and there's many around, honestly. Like, there's a lot of them. So I'd recommend you go out and grab some. It's a good sustainable option, and there's no shortage of them really. These snails feed on the encrusting life that often coats rocks underwater. You can see here a lot of these rocks are quite barren, and I believe that's due to the overabundance of these snails. So I believe I'm doing a service to the ecosystem by trimming their numbers down, even if it is just a little bit. Kinna are obviously also a huge factor considering to this barrenness on the rocks. However, I'd broken open a couple kinna and they really didn't have much substance to them. I do like eating them, but these ones were no good, so I left them today. Another nice handful of Cook's turbans, probably the easiest way to get a feed in the ocean. Much easier than hunting fish. Even though this is a very abundant resource at the moment, doesn't mean you should take it for granted. That's the reason we have a lot of the problems we do in our ocean nowadays, overexploitation. I had a look at my float boat, seen already a couple, ended up throwing quite a few back. At the end of the day, I was left with 5 of them. I haven't even eaten them before, so don't know if I'd like them or not. So there's no reason to take any more than that. Whenever I see rubbish in the ocean or discarded human waste, I take it upon myself to try and remove it from there. It's just a little thing we can do to give back to the ocean that we're honestly taking from every time we're out there. I've taken a lot more from the ocean than I can ever hope to give back to it. Well, hopefully. I'm hoping by running my YouTube channel I can kind of raise awareness for a lot of the issues in the ocean and kind of open people's eyes to the risks that are facing it and inspire people to really care about it in the way I do. I believe that's how I can make a difference. If you go diving, you should have it in your best interest to look after what gives you so much joy and satisfaction. If you see rubbish, you should be taking it out of the ocean. Doesn't matter if it's yours or not. Get it out of there. Make a difference. Be the change you want to see in the world. And make the world a better place. Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I had an amazing time this day. It was some of the most fun I've had diving recently, despite not catching anything epic. It was just really great to be out there. Anyway, see you in the next one.